pro, it's racing. Even though that's your teammate, you're gonna have to race him. How can 3 laps be so long? Since this is a sprint weekend, this weekend's a sprint weekend. Because this is a sprint weekend, the sprint, lap 18 and 19 happened and the race is over. It's because it's a sprint. So this is the tire section. Welcome to Tire Talk. And because tires were like flying every which way, I don't know where I was going with that because I didn't make any notes. I don't want to talk about tires. Pit stops are very important. Oh my god, how do I explain this? And then, ladies and gentlemen, during the last lap, history was made. Hey F1 fans, welcome back to another F1 chat with your host, Ogane. Today we're going to be talking about the Shanghai Grand Prix that happened in March of 2026 this year. Just as a disclaimer, I am a newer fan. I started watching F1 in October of 2025, so I'm about 6 months in. And this is just one beginner fan talking to other beginner fans. And if you are more experienced and there's anything that you want to add, just leave it down in the comments. I'm always happy to learn something new about F1. Ready? Let's get started. To start off with this Grand Prix, we're going to be talking about the track. The Shanghai Grand Prix takes place on the Shanghai International Circuit. It's officially called the Chinese Grand Prix, but the circuit that it happens on is called the Shanghai International Circuit. Now, what's cool about the circuit is that if you look at it from a bird's eye view, the layout resembles the Chinese character of Shang, and the meaning of Shang means upwards. So that's just a really fun fact about this track. Other things you should know about this track is that it is windy, so the winds tend to kick up a lot of dust on the track, making it a little bit harder for drivers to navigate, which will be very interesting to watch because on this track, the regulations say that you can push the batteries even harder. So I'm assuming that means that drivers didn't push as much as they could during the Australia track because they said that on this track they can push the limits even more. So it sounded like there was a restriction imposed during the Australian track. So I'm not sure if it's going to be like this on every track where some tracks you can push more and other tracks it would be more restricted. Maybe it has to do with the new regulations. I did not read all of the new regulations because there's just so much information in there and I don't know how much of it pertains to actually watching. Some of the tech stuff you don't need to know if you're just watching F1. But if you want to get more into it, you can of course dive deeper into it and see how everything looks like. Another thing about this track is because of all the turns, the left front tires of the cars tend to wear down a lot more. So I wonder what that means. I don't know. Will that affect their driving? Will that cause them to slide more? What does that mean? I don't know. But apparently a lot of people are talking about it. So Maybe you need to know. And the last thing I'll say about this track is that it is only part of the F1 circuits. Now, what does that mean? It means that in F2 or in F3 or even in Formula Academy, they are not allowed to use the track. Only F1 drivers are allowed to use the track. So that means that it is the first time an F1 rookie driver will be driving on this track. The F1 rookie this year is Arvid Lindblad. This will be his first time on this circuit in his career. Another person who is not quite a rookie, but it will still be his first time on this track is Franco Colapinto. He is an Alpine active driver this year. However, last year, during the time where F1 raced in Shanghai, he was still a reserve driver, which means that this is his first time racing on this track. Another reason why this is important is because since this is a sprint weekend, as I mentioned in my beginner F1 video, there is only going to be 1 hour where the drivers get to drive on this track and it not count towards the point or be consequential, which means that Lindblad and Colapinto will only have 1 hour to get used to this track instead of their regular 3 hours. Now, let's get into Tech Talk. I included the section for this race because the Ferrari team got upgrades. What does that mean? What is an upgrade? So throughout the season, cars can add upgrades to their car to make it faster. So because of the data that Ferrari gathered last race, they decided to add an upside down wing or a flip-flop wing or a rotisserie wing or a Macarena wing. People are calling the wing different things. I think upside down wing makes the most sense for me. Basically, it's a wing that they added to the back of their car on the tail of their car. Instead of just flipping open, it rotates open. Got it? Got it? Cool. Another thing they added was halo winglets. Now, we didn't really talk about what halos are, but it's that big T-looking like thing that covers the driver's cockpit. That is right ahead of where the driver's seat is, and it surrounds them. The halo is there to protect you so you don't get smacked in the face. Anytime there's debris like flying at them on the track, or like let's say a car in front of you has had a crash and all of the debris is coming your way, so you don't get smacked in the face, the halo is there to just protect you. Another reason is that for a while, cars were just losing tires. Like if a car had a collision or a crash, their tires just flew off. And because tires were like flying every which way, they added the halo so that way drivers wouldn't get smacked in the face by a tire. It's also important because if a car flips over and they land upside down, the halo is also there to protect them. The halo is just very important, and it protects the driver's head in case of collision or debris or crash. In even one instance, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen got into a crash where one car was just on top of another, and if the halo wasn't there, the driver might have been crushed to death. So we're just grateful for halos. Now, let's get back to the halo winglet. So the halo winglet was added to the front of the halo, and it was made transparent so that way it wouldn't obstruct more of the driver's view. It was 3D printed by the team, and the reason they added it was to help with the airflow. So it's supposed to reduce turbulence to a driver's face and actually break up the wind so it can go up into the airbox and help actually lift the car and help the car go faster. That's the idea behind it. Now, does it work in practical application? We'll find out during the race. It's also supposed to improve the airflow into the airbox. The airbox is that big circle thing that sits behind the driver's head. I don't know what it does. I call this section Tech Talk, but I am limited in my knowledge. We're all learning together. And so if you know more about the airboxes and halos and winglets, please let us know down in the comments what's going on. To conclude the Tech Talk, I just want to talk about the turbo. Turbo is part of the new regulations this season. The turbo gives you more power, but it doesn't give you more power right away, is what it sounds like turbo is. And that is why some drivers have been getting poor starts off of the start line, because they haven't learned how to manage that lag. This concludes Tech Talk. I did my best to explain what I understand. I feel like there's a lot of gaps in my knowledge, so please tell me more information. Now, moving on to free practice. Because this is a sprint weekend, there's only one free practice session. However, after the sprint, drivers can work on their car between the sprint race and the qualifying session. Because a lot of drivers did not finish the Australian Grand Prix, only one McLaren made it through, only one of Audi made it through, only one of Red Bull Racing made it through, only one of Cadillac, and none of Aston Martin made it through. So it's Mercedes, Ferrari, Haas, Alpine, and Williams were the only teams that made it through with both drivers out of 11 teams. So that's like half of them are gone. Just 5 teams made it through, and then 6 teams only made it through with one driver. So because a lot of the teams only had one driver make it through, they have to gather more data before they can make proper upgrades to their car. So for this free practice session, they have to focus on gathering data for the race ahead, rather than, the usual 3-hour practice session that they would have, where they can just gather data for the upcoming race and also for the races to come. And remember how I said it's very important for rookies to get some lap times on the track and actually do the whole circuit? Well, our precious rookie, Arvid Lindblad, with 46 minutes remaining in the session, he's just out of the car. It wasn't very clear about what was wrong with his car. He had pulled off the racetrack. It seems that there was potential mechanical issues, or it could have been a problem with his transmission. It's unclear. He did get 15 minutes into the session, but he didn't get that many lap times. So what are you gonna do? There's not much else to say about the free practice session. Everything went pretty normally. Carlos did seem to have a problem in the beginning, but he was able to get in lap times. And Perez, who was out before getting lap times, seemed to have a problem later on and had to go back into the garage and do some more work for sprint qualifying. Now we move on to sprint qualifying. And it turns out that Perez did not get to participate during sprint qualifying. Perez didn't leave the garage because of a fuel system issue. Everything else went pretty normal. Nothing really significant happened. It's just a regular sprint sessions. And now on to the sprint. The sprint has no mandatory pit stops. I didn't say this before, but most racetracks or circuits, you have to have at least one mandatory pit stop, if not two. The ones who dictate if a track has a pit stop or not is Pirelli. Pirelli is also the ones who provide tires to the whole F1 team. So this is the tire section. Welcome to Tire Talk. Pirelli provides 5 different tire compounds along with 2 extra ones. These compounds range from soft to hard, and the 2 extra ones is the tires you would use to drive in the rain. The tires from hardest to softest is C1, C2, C3, C4, C5. And the tires that you would use to drive in the wet or the rain is intermediate and wet tires. Very creative with the names. Pirelli usually will check out a track and deem which 3 tire compounds they want to use. We don't talk about the bonus tires because the bonus tires can come into play whenever it's wet. So we're not talking about these tires, we're only talking about the C1 to C5 tires. So Pirelli will choose 3 tire compounds, and whatever 3 they pick, they'll name it soft, medium, hard. Wherever they fall on the chart doesn't matter. They'll always just be called soft, medium, or hard for that track. So you can have a track that requires a lower grip, and for lower grip you would use softer tires. And it's called a soft tire because it doesn't take that long to warm up. The hard tires are called hard tires because they take longer to warm up. If you get your tire the right temperature, it will have more grip and you will be able to get faster lap times. Anyways, the sprint has no mandatory pit stops, so you do not have to pit to change your tires. It's expected for the tires to last the whole race, so most drivers will use a medium tire because they do not wear out super fast. However, they don't last as long as hard tires will. Therefore, it's just a perfect middleman for 19 laps. Since qualifying already happened, the top 3 in this race are going to be Russell, Antonelli, and Norris. Boop, 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 boop. The red lights go out and the sprint starts. Now, Antonelli and Verstappen got a really bad start, but Hamilton got a great launch off the line and he used it and is now in 2nd place. Antonelli and Hadjar had a collision, and Lindblad had a spin. However, all 3 are still in the race and they're still going strong. Antonelli is now in 8th place and Verstappen is in 14th place. This is all during the first lap. And then for a few laps, Leclerc and Hamilton fight for 1st place while Russell is just lurking in the background waiting for his opportunity because he's in 3rd place. So usually when 2 drivers are fighting, the driver right behind them kind of waits for them to focus so much on each other and waits for an opportunity to cut both of them off and get ahead. It's worked out very well for Russell to do that. At least when I watched him last season, it was a tactic that he would use and he would always get a podium because of it. Now, Antonelli, who was in 8th place, is now fighting Piastri and Norris to overtake them to get back to the head of the pack. By lap 6, Behrman, who qualified in P9, is up to P7, and because of the contact Antonelli and Hadjar had at the beginning of the race, Antonelli got a 10-second penalty. Now we're 8 laps in, and Leclerc and Hamilton, who are both driving for Ferrari, are still duking it out for P2. And for the moment, Leclerc comes out on top. And meanwhile, Antonelli has passed both of the McLarens, which is Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. By lap 12, Lindblad is told to retire the car. Because of the spin that he had during lap 1, the team wanted to bring the car in just to fix any issues that the car might have. That way, the car can be ready for qualifying. Now by lap 13, the top 5 are Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, Hamilton, and Norris. By lap 14, Bottas, remember him? He's with Cadillac. He retires the car. Bottas retired because of a technical issue with the car. He reported that he was having significant deployment issues with the car, leading to a loss of power, and he couldn't really get a good time on the board, so they opted to retire and just fix it and just see what the problem was, so that way maybe they can fix it before they go into qualifying for the Grand Prix. And then Hülkenberg also pulled over to retire and ended up not finishing the race. He also retired because of a technical issue. It didn't really say what it was. It just said technical issue. The safety car came out because Hülkenberg pulled over while on the track, but because they have to recover his car, they put out the yellow flag, which is telling cars to slow down, and a full-on safety car comes out to slow the race down. Basically, a safety car comes out in front of the race leader, and it makes sure that everybody slows down and goes at a slower pace. Because of this, everybody dives into the pit, including Antonelli, who has to serve a 10-second penalty. Remember what I said a 10-second penalty is? Basically, a car will pull into the pit lane. They'll pull in front of their team's garage, and the team is not allowed to touch the car. Don't change the tires, don't do nothing. They're not allowed to touch the car. The driver stays there for 10 seconds and then goes right back out. And I will tell you, this safety car really did save Antonelli, because if he had to serve the 10-second penalty without the safety car, that means that he would have to go into the pit lane to wait for 10 seconds and then go out, losing position. When you go into the pit lane and you pull in for a pit stop, no matter how long the pit stop lasts, you still have to drive in and drive out. And the drive in, drive out time is usually anywhere from like 20-ish seconds to 19-ish seconds, depending on what track you are in. In China, the pit lane loss time is approximately 23 seconds. Because Antonelli had to serve a 10-second penalty, he would have to pull into the pit lane, wait for 10 seconds, and then go back out, which means he would lose a total of 33 seconds. Now, I didn't talk about this before, but timing is everything in Formula One. Remember in my last video when I said that it takes under a minute to drive through an F1 circuit, which is approximately 3 to 5 miles long, depending on which circuit you are at? Well, if drivers are finishing a lap in under 2 minutes and you're taking 33 seconds out of that 2-minute window, that is a big chunk of time. And since drivers are within seconds of each other at all times, the biggest gap I've seen in between F1 cars is a gap of, and this is for midfield team cars, like not anyone who had issues, just like a regular gap, is about 18 seconds. And that is not super common, but it does happen between midfield cars and top team cars. And so if Antonelli had to serve his penalty during the sprint without a safety car and everyone is going full speed, with only 3 laps left, he would have never recovered. He would have finished in the back. Even Cadillac might have been in front of him. Like, it would have been bad. But because of the safety car, Antonelli got to get into the pits, serve his time penalty, and get out and still be part of the race. So that was like a miracle for him. So Antonelli serves his penalty, and because everybody dove into the pits, the order is going to be different. Because each team has to change the tires on their cars. Each team does it in a different amount of time. So the fastest, an average pit stop time should be around 2 to 3 seconds. Seconds. This is why I'm telling you that losing 10 seconds on top of like having to drive 23 seconds in the pit lane, that is massive. So the thing is, you want to stay under 2 seconds for a pit stop because it is crucial. If you are like 4 seconds, that's a bad pit stop. Like, that's terrible. I saw a pit stop that was 7 seconds long, and it was 7 seconds long because the pit crew was not ready for the driver to pit. And the pit stop crew is running out there, lugging the tires, trying to change it as fast as they can, and it took 7 seconds. The driver who went into that pit stop lost the race. They were in first place, and because of that atrocious pit stop, they lost the race. Pit stops are very important. I need to drive it home for you guys. The pit stops are very important. You need to be able to have a fast pit stop, and we want to keep it as low as possible. McLaren currently holds the fastest pit stop in F1 history, which is 1.8 seconds. So that's like 1 second in like 80 milliseconds. Pit stop timing is everything. So that's why usually drivers have to serve their penalty in the pit box. That's what they're called. The spot in front of the team's garage where a driver pits is called a pit box. So if you ever hear a driver saying box, 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 it's because they want to go into the pit box to change their tires or whatever else they need to get changed. Okay, now where was I? The order of the top 5 coming out of the pit stop is Russell, Leclerc, Norris, Hamilton, and Lawson. We didn't talk about Liam Lawson. Liam Lawson races for Racing Bulls, which is Red Bull's junior team called V Carb. So coming out into the top 5 is really good. So now we're in lap 17. Everybody has done their pit stop, and Piastri is coming for everybody. He starts by overtaking Antonelli, and then overtaking Behrman, and then overtaking Lawson for P5. Like, this man is not playing. He came to play. He's like, I lost out in Australia and I am hungry. However, he did overtake Antonelli before they crossed the start-finish line. So when a safety car ends, it will usually end at the start-finish line. So when a car passes the start-finish line, they can overtake the cars in front of them, because during a safety car, you cannot overtake cars. You're supposed to drive at a reduced speed, single file, on the racing line, stay within track limits. Like, it's very strict, because it's to ensure everybody's safety, to make sure that whatever they're trying to remove from the track gets removed and everybody is safe. So Piastri overtook Antonelli before the start-finish line, so he has to give the position back, but only to Antonelli. Oh, and did I forget to say that Antonelli, after serving his 10-second penalty and coming out of the pit lane, and after crossing the start-finish line after the safety car, just whoop, went up to P5 and held it. Lap 18 and 19 happened and the race is over. It's because it's a sprint. We're not going to be here too long. The top 8 drivers get points that will count towards their championship. And now the podium winners are... Russell, Leclerc, and Hamilton. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, Ferrari got podium. Love to see it. And now we're just gonna send one up, or pour one out, however you want to do this, to the ones who did not finish, which is the ones who did not finish is Hulkenberg, Bottas, and Lindblad. Now we're moving on to qualifying. Okay, now let's talk about qualifying. And this is the qualifying for the Chinese Grand Prix. The significant thing that happened during qualifying for the Grand Prix was that Kimi Antonelli got pole position. Now, this is exciting because he is the youngest F1 pole sitter in Formula One history at 19. The youngest in Formula One history. The last person to do it was Sebastian Vettel, and he was 21. So Kimi Antonelli is the youngest Grand Prix pole sitter. This is not his first pole position because he did get sprint pole in Miami. However, we're not talking about a sprint race. We're talking about a Grand Prix race. So he's the youngest driver to do it in F1 history, and we're super excited about that. And oh, we got to see it. So we're all excited about that. Round of applause. George Russell didn't seem very happy on the radio for Kimi Antonelli, but we're not stirring up trouble here. We're just making an observation. I kind of understand why there would be kind of a lack of excitement, because he is currently the championship leader. He's never been a championship leader in F1. And so it's very exciting for him when he won the Australian race. It became the first time in his career for him to lead an F1 championship. So that was exciting for him. And now his teammate, who was a rookie last year, now has pole position. But we are just making an observation. We're not saying anything. We're not saying things. Just an observation. He didn't seem very happy for Kimi on the radio. He didn't seem very excited about it. But you know what? Maybe he's just focused. Maybe he's just focused on winning the Grand Prix and staying in the lead. This is what might be going on. I forgot to mention that George Russell did have a problem during Q3 where he didn't get out until the final couple minutes of qualifying, which could be another reason why he was upset. But we are just making an observation. We're not saying anything. We're not saying things. Now, let's just have a funny meme moment. McLaren, Williams, and Alpine are all using Mercedes engines. And I didn't explain this, so I'm going to explain this now. Teams will build a car, but they will not always build their engines. They will just buy an engine from either another team, and usually teams will sell their engines from the previous year. So let's say Mercedes had an engine in 2025 and now it's 2026. They're not going to use their 2025 engine. They're just going to be like, hey, do you want this engine? We already built it. It's for Formula One cars. You just have to tweak it a little bit to get it up to regulations, but it's already a Formula One engine. So teams will just do that to save some money so that way they can add upgrades and spend money elsewhere during the F1 season. Because Formula One team does have a cost cap, they can only spend so much money each season. So if they can save money by not building their own engines and just like adding upgrades throughout the season to get the faster car, then why not? Anyways, I say all this to say that the McLaren team and the Williams team are not doing well. They're just having engine issues. Remember this. This will be important later on. Also, during this time is when F1 fans found out that the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Arabia Grand Prix will be cancelled this year and has been cancelled. It was supposed to take place in April. This means that there will not be any Formula One races during the month of April of 2026. Now, let's talk about race day. Here's your race day recap. Now, remember about the Mercedes engines? Well, McLaren did not make it out of the pit lane. It was Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris had an electrical issue with the power unit. Anywho, they are out of the race. And this is interesting because McLaren won the championship last year and they won the constructors last year. So they were the big dogs and now they are conveniently out of the race. We're not talking about conspiracies, we're just talking about facts. Now, the ones who are going to be starting in the pit lane are Bortoleto, and the 5 lights go out. Boop, 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 boop. The top 3 are Russell, Leclerc, and Hamilton. Ferrari charges forward. They took no prisoner. They whoop, whoop. They went for it. And they were rewarded. They took the lead. Verstappen got a bad launch again. Hadjar has a spin, and Behrman, trying to avoid him, ends up losing his track position, and the Cadillacs bump into each other. Now, Hadjar does recover from his spin, but he's bringing up the rear in last place. By lap 2, the Mercedes came back with a vengeance and overtook the Ferraris. Verstappen, who lost positions, he fell all the way down past 10th place. Now he's back up to 10th place with Lindblad right in front of him. By lap 4, it's Mercedes. It's a 1-2 and they are in the lead and Kimi is leading the pack. By lap 9, Lawson and Lindblad are fighting for 8th place and Lawson isn't happy about that, but it's just like, bro, it's racing. Even though that's your teammate, you're gonna have to race him. It's called F1 racing. By lap 10, Lance Stroll pulls off the track and has to retire his car. And that means the safety car comes out and all of the teams dive into the pit, except for a handful of drivers. And part of the handful of drivers was Colapinto and Ocon, who drive for Alpine and Haas. They are now P2 and 3. And that's the crazy thing about making pit stops, because you can be part of the back markers, which are the teams that are usually down at the bottom from like P16 to P22. But if everyone makes a pit stop, you can end up leading the race or being within the top 5. And so right now, Colapinto and Ocon is in the top 5, although I should say that Colapinto has been doing very well thus far and has usually been within the top 10 these past few races. So there's that. Antonelli is still the race leader. During lap 14, the Ferraris come charging in with a vengeance and they're like, no, we're going to be in within the top 5. They overtake Russell and now it's Hamilton and Leclerc is in 5th place and Hamilton's in 4th. Hamilton does not stop the charge there. He overtakes Colapinto for P2 and is running after Antonelli for P1. Leclerc also follows suit and overtakes Colapinto for P3. So now the podium places are Antonelli, Hamilton, and Leclerc. So Russell isn't giving up. He starts to fight forward and he is up to P4. And then the yellow flags come out. There's debris on the track, so they have to remove the debris. Remember I said it is windy on the Shanghai track, so it tends to blow things around. Debris has blown onto the track, and now they have to go remove it. Meanwhile, Colapinto is still in P5, and Ocon is right behind him, and Ocon is trying to overtake him, but Colapinto is an iron wall. He's like, no way. I can't race the top teams, but I can race you, and I'm not letting you overtake me. And he means it. He holds on to it, and by lap 27, he's just still P5. And Ferrari are fighting for P2. And because they're fighting so much, remember when I explained that when cars are fighting each other, they're so focused on each other, they end up slowing down little by little? Well, because they're slowing down little by little, because they keep fighting each other, the person in front of them is getting further and further ahead. And the person in front of them in this case is Kimi Antonelli. And he also has 1st place right now. He's the race leader in P1. And he's pulling ahead while the Ferraris behind him are just like fighting each other. And the time gap starts to widen between P1 and P2. So Leclerc wins that round of fighting. And Russell ends up overtaking Hamilton. So now it's Antonelli, Leclerc and Russell. By lap 32, Alonso retires because of the shaky car. Now, officially on paper, they said it's because of extreme driver discomfort and car unreliability, but Alonso, Fernando himself, after the race said he couldn't feel his hands or feet because the car was vibrating so much. Remember I said because of the vibrations the car was having, if you stay in the car for too long, it can cause nerve damage? Well, our boy Fernando Alonso was feeling that, so he's all like, I'm gonna box and retire because the money ain't worth my health. Maybe he said that. That's totally paraphrasing. By the way, this is just me interpreting his actions. But he did retire because of health concerns and extreme discomfort. Now remember I told you that there were midfield teams towards the top of the race order? It was Colapinto and Ocon. They've been duking it out for P5, and Colapinto has been an iron wall. Well, finally they made contact. Well, Colapinto ended up pitting, and so when he came out of the pit lane to join the race, Ocon was right behind him. And usually when a car comes out of the pit lane, they tend to stay on the racing line. The racing line is just the fastest path to get around the track the fastest. And so he's on the racing line. All the Formula One drivers know what the racing line is because they would have like studied it and like looked at it during the meetings, and they would have stuck to it during the race. Now, because Colapinto is out of the pits, he comes out ahead of Ocon and he's on the racing line. Ocon, however, wants to get ahead of him. So when Colapinto turns the first corner, according to like what the racing line is, Ocon tries to sneak in. He didn't think Colapinto would turn that tightly, and he was trying to like get in the corner and overtake Colapinto before Colapinto makes a full turn. However, Colapinto was following the race line, so he ends up hitting Ocon and they both spin. However, they're both able to stay in the race. And a lap later, Ocon did admit that that was his fault. The overtaking rule is that if you are gonna overtake a car, especially like during a corner, your front axle has to be at least alongside of their mirrors. And when you look at the replay, Ocon's front axle was not alongside of Colapinto's mirror. It was further back, which is, he had to admit it was his fault because it was his fault. Oh no, I didn't get to talk about this. Maybe I'll include this later, but I'm just going to say this for now in case I forget. During the sprint race, Perez got a 5-second penalty for safety car infraction. It's because he wasn't driving the right speed limit behind the safety car. Now, back to the race. Now, during lap 35, Hamilton, apparently he had been saying this on the radio for a while, but this is the first time we heard it. Hamilton was saying that he had a problem when he came out of the corners. He wasn't having enough power. So remember, during the corners when you're braking, you get to charge your battery, which gives you more power to be able to overtake people. So he was saying when he came out of the corners, he wasn't having any power. However, right after he says that, Leclerc, who was in front of him, ended up making a mistake, going too wide into the next corner, and Hamilton was able to overtake him. So I guess the power ended up not being an issue. And Hamilton is now up to P3. Now, I don't know if I said this or not, but Russell is now up into P2. And the thing about George Russell that I've noticed is that he is on the track, to me, he's like a silent beast. Like, he will not draw attention to himself. He's usually like lurking somewhere in the background. Everyone will be like duking it out, and like he'll just be like waiting for an opportunity. And I didn't notice that he got up to P2, but apparently he was just up into P2. Last time we checked in with him, he was in P4, but now we're on lap 38 and he's up to P2, and Ferrari is duking it out for P3. Hamilton comes out on top, and by lap 41 he is hunting down Russell. And if you ever watch F1, you will just get so much joy out of Leclerc talking to his race engineer. It's just always peak comedy. After Hamilton overtakes Leclerc, his racing engineer is all like, that was quite a battle, and Leclerc's response is, I'm glad. It sounded like Leclerc really enjoyed duking it out with Hamilton. There's that. It sounds like everyone's having fun. And that's why I watch F1, because I want everybody to have a good time. Now, because of all the fighting that Ferrari did while they were in P3, P4, P2, P3, P3, P4, they were like just fighting up and down the track. Because of all the fighting, Antonelli, who is the race leader, got to just keep going without worrying about anybody, because nobody was chasing him. Everyone was just like fighting for positions. Remember earlier when I said that when cars are fighting, the car in front of them can just go full on and widen the gap because these cars have slowed down to fight? Well, Antonelli took advantage of the fighting, and now he's 7 seconds ahead of everybody else. That is a huge amount of time for someone who is in the lead to have. We saw this last year with McLaren. They were very good at like keeping a wide gap between P1 and P2 if it wasn't a McLaren 1-2. So this is just fun to see. It's fun to see Kimi Antonelli doing it. By lap 44, Carlos Sainz is up in the point, and Isaac Hadjar, who remember had the spin in the beginning and ended up in the back, he is up to P9. So love to see it, Hadjar. And it's a good day for the underdogs because Williams, Alpine, and Haas are all within the top 10. Less than 10 laps before the race ends, Verstappen is told to come back into the pits and retire the car. Ah! You mean I raced this whole race and you're just telling me to just come back into the box and just be like, okay, your race is done? His energy recovery system was having an issue and he had coolant failure. And so because of that, he had to retire the car. In less than 10 laps before the end of the race, he's been racing for 46 laps. That's crazy. And because he retired, Colapinto was able to get into the points and get P10. So I'm having mixed feelings because I'm like, Colapinto, you're like in the points, but also Max Verstappen was the sacrifice. Fine, it's just a race. But it hurts. Okay, so currently the top 3 are Antonelli, Russell, and Hamilton. I'm sorry, there's 56 laps. And with 3 laps left to go, Antonelli, who is the youngest Grand Prix pole sitter in F1 history at the young age of 19, spins and he goes too deep into the hairpin and he has to like get the car back onto the track and he's losing seconds, and remember, seconds are very important. And right behind him is Russell in the same Mercedes coming for the lead, and Hamilton's right behind Russell coming for Russell and Antonelli, who was a rookie last season, and Antonelli has to like get back on the track ASAP. Is Antonelli gonna be able to keep up the race pace? Is he gonna be able to stay in the lead and ultimately take the Grand Prix win? And Kimi's racing engineer was just cool as a cucumber and said, Kimi, 3 laps left. Let's bring it home. And I am just dying. When we saw Kimi go off the track, I tell you, all of our hearts just dropped. And Kimi, his heart probably dropped too. Oh my God. And so it's just like, okay, is Kimi going to be able to keep the lead for the last 3 laps? Or is Russell going to overtake him? And I know I keep saying this, but like the suspense was there. It's just like, you're just watching it. You're like, oh my God, how can 3 laps be so long? Like, he just has to like bring it home. And then, ladies and gentlemen, during the last lap, history was made. Kimi Antonelli brought it home, crossed the finish line, 19 years of age, 202 days old. He wins his first Grand Prix. Screaming. The last time an Italian won a Grand Prix was 20 years ago, back in 2006, and that man was 33 years old. Kimi did it at 19 and brought the Italians back. And he cried, and we all cried with him. Okay, now we get to the podium, and the winners are Kimi Antonelli, George Russell, and Lewis Hamilton. Yay! I remember watching the post-race interview, and I remember just tears in my eyes. And before, I used to not understand why people would get so into sports. I'm like, it's just a game, why are you being so emotional? And I just didn't understand it. And now being part of just seeing Kimi's progression from when he was a rookie to having his first race win, I can almost understand why Zach Brown got a tattoo of the Miami circuit when Lando Norris won his first race at the Miami Grand Prix in 2024. I can almost understand it. I can almost make sense of it, because it's just like seeing someone from the beginning of their career all the way to getting their first race win. That is just tears. I don't know, I feel like I have no words for it. And the way Kimi Antonelli puts it, he just cried. Just so overwhelmed by how grateful and thankful he was to be an Italian driver. Because the Italians have not won an F1 race in 20 years! Before he was born! You don't understand, guys! Kimi wasn't even born yet when Giancarlo, the last Italian to win a Grand Prix race, won. It was in March of 2006. Antonelli wasn't born until August of 2006. This man was not even born yet. Oh! He was born and he's all like, I know what I'm gonna do with my life. It's like he knew. It's like he knew. And he did say during his interview, he said, this has been a dream to bring Italians back to the top of F1, to win a Grand Prix as an Italian was his dream to accomplish that. And he did! Wow, I'm just, guys, let's get on with the interview. So after we all cried, Kimi went on to answer some questions, and basically the gist of his interview said that he gave himself a bit of a heart attack when he went too deep into that corner on lap 54. Remember when he went off the track and we were screaming? I was screaming, and I was like, oh my gosh! And he said, I gave myself a bit of a heart attack when I went too deep into that corner, but I was able to bring it home. And it was a good race overall. He also said it wasn't an easy start because remember, he got a bad start, which means when it came time to take off, his car did not take off. Remember earlier in this video when I talked about the turbo, as in your engine gets more power, but then there's a slight lag in the power delivery because Kimi Antonelli got a bad start. He was saying that he gave too much room to Ferrari and that gave them the opportunity to overtake him. But he managed to bring it home. So all's well that ends well. And we're just gonna celebrate the win. Okay, next is Russell's interview. And Russell says, a huge congratulations to Kimi. He's been driving really amazing this year. It was a tough battle throughout, but getting a Mercedes 1-2 is all that we can ask for. And then he just thanks everybody and he's like also very excited. And then they handed the mic to Lewis Hamilton. And this is his first Grand Prix podium with Ferrari. He joined the Ferrari team last season. And before he raced for Ferrari, Lewis Hamilton was a Mercedes driver. And here's what he had to say. First, he says, a huge congratulations to Kimi and Mercedes. He said that he's very happy to share this moment with Kimi. And he says that he and the Ferrari team has a lot of work to do to try and keep up with Mercedes. He also talks about having so much fun during the race, battling it out with Leclerc for most of the race. He said that it was the most enjoyable race he had in a long time. And I am like, you're not throwing shade at Mercedes, are you? Are you also throwing shade at Ferrari for not having a decent car last year? Or I'm sorry, for not having a car that you deemed to be decent. Because as much as Lewis Hamilton was saying the car wasn't good, Charles Leclerc, his teammate, who was in the same machinery, got podiums. But he didn't get a race win, but he did get podiums. So I don't know. He said that it was a great wheel-to-wheel battle with Charles, and it was very fair. And because he was battling it out with Charles so much, there were a couple times where it looks like they were going to hit each other, crash or have a collision. And Lewis Hamilton says, yeah, we did touch, but it was a subtle touch, just a kiss. That's what it's all about. It's about tough racing. He said that Ferrari would like to be in the front, but thank you for the team for making a decent car. And remember at the beginning of the video, I said that Ferrari did upgrade. So it seems that the upgrades that Ferrari did pay off, because not only were they able to fight it out on the track with each other, they were usually fighting it out within the top 5, and they were chasing podium and they got podium. So love to see it. Love that Ferrari has a competitive car and that their upgrades didn't prove to be wrong. The only issue that came up with the upgrade was during practice, FP1, when Lewis first used the upside down wing. Because it rotates, there's a slight delay on actually feeling the shift of it when you activate it and when you close it. So because it's not instantaneous to like open and close, because it has to flip over, there's a slight, I don't know, like mental calibration you have to do between you and the car, so that way you don't end up making any driver errors. And Lewis Hamilton did have an error that he made when he first was trying out the upside down wing, where he actually had a spin. And I forgot to mention that, but it did happen. But that was the only cause for concern. But all in all, it turned out to be a great upgrade because they are on podium. Yay! Kimi finishes up the interview session. The interviewer was very excited, saying, "You won your first Grand Prix. Isn't that exciting? You and Russell are gonna win this whole thing." Mind you, this is just race number 2. And Kimi, with a good head on his shoulders, was like, we're just in the beginning. We just have to keep pushing. And Russell is a very incredible driver. I've learned a lot from him. It's gonna take a lot to beat him. We're gonna focus and keep going forward race by race and see where we end up at the end of the year. And I am like, this boy was PR trained. He was literally trained. He's so excited and his training kicked in. He's all like, we just gotta see at the end of the year. I'm not making any promises. I don't know, but we're doing really well. Okay, my final thoughts. I'm so happy to see Pinto in the points. I'm also happy that Behrman finished in P5 and Hadjar finished in P8. Because when they crashed in the beginning of the race, it was tragic. Like you should have seen it. The way Hadjar spinned and Behrman had to pull off to the side to like avoid hitting him like at full speed. Crazy. But thank goodness both of their cars were fine and they were able to make it to the end of the race and be in the points. That's like a really big accomplishment. And also for Hadjar, he just can't catch a break. He keeps having collisions, having crashes, having car issues. And so just to see him finish a race and finish the race well is good. We're happy for it. Happy to see it. And then Verstappen having to retire with only 10 laps left, like that. Ooh, I touched on that before and I was like, ooh, still hurts. I was still saddened by it. It's so sad when you have to end your race because of a car issue. But reading the interviews while doing the research for this video, he sounds like he's hopeful. He said that, yeah, it was very frustrating, but we're gonna work out the kinks and we'll get back to it next race. Now, to everyone who DNF'd and DNS. So DNF means did not finish and DNS means did not start. So Alex Albon had a hydraulics issue. The McLarens had electrical issues with the power unit. Stroll said his car just switched off. Alonso, we all know the car was causing him nerve damage. And Max because of his recovery system and his coolant. So these 6 drivers did not start or did not finish this race. So sad. I'm like, oh, this is not me throwing shade. But I have to state that if Lewis did not get podium at least once during this race in Shanghai, it would have been embarrassing. Because the only thing I learned about Lewis Hamilton through watching the F1 season last year is that he loves the Shanghai track. Like, he loves it. That is the track where he has the most fun. Maybe there's a different track out there that he really enjoys, but I think he really excels at the Shanghai track. I think that's where he's in his most comfort zone. So much so that he actually said it. He said, I haven't had an enjoyable race in such a long time. And so it makes sense that he's more comfortable with the car and this is the track he's most comfortable on. So if he didn't get a podium, I would have been looking at him sideways. I'm sorry, but the way he's been hyped up to me, and for him to not get a podium on his favorite track in a top car, I would have been looking at all of y'all sideways. So I'm glad that he got podium. I did have to put that out there. It just made sense to mention that. And it sounds like he had a great race overall. And after the year he had last year, he needed a win. And we're happy to see it. All right. That is your 2026 Chinese Grand Prix race weekend recap. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. I will be doing more on the 2026 season. I will be hopping on to chat with you about my thoughts and feelings about this race. This race was very entertaining. We got to see the youngest pole sitter in F1 history, Kimi Antonelli. We also got to see him win his maiden Grand Prix Yeah, they call it a maiden Grand Prix when you won your first Grand Prix. So we got to see him win his maiden Grand Prix at the age of 19 years old. And he's the first Italian to do it in 20 years. And so we just got to be a part of F1 history. And so that was really fun. We also saw Lewis Hamilton winning his first podium in his Ferrari career with F1. That was also exciting. And we saw Mercedes getting a 1-2. They did it in Australia, where they also did a front row lockout. And now they did it again in China. And I wonder if we'll see more of Ferrari getting a 1-2, because it does seem like they currently have the more superior car, or if we'll see other cars start to do upgrades and catch up to Mercedes and give them a run for their money. All right, I'll see you next time.